Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, this is a big one.
A huge one. Today we're diving into this really surprising
The
overlap.
convergence, right?
Exactly, the convergence of UFOs, advanced, sometimes classified technology, and the actual mechanics of how modern religious beliefs get formed.
And how they spread, which today is, well, it's instant. It's not just about proving or disproving little green men.
No, not at all. Our source material here is actually some really deep sociological research. It's drawn from these interactions with academics, scientists, industry
All
insiders.
studying this phenomenon right now, but mostly in secret. They call themselves the Invisible College.
Right. So our main source is a researcher who was essentially embedded with this group, with these scientist believers.
And we're talking about molecular biologists, people deep in the space industry, serious people.
So our mission today is really twofold. First, we need to get our heads around how technology is both the infrastructure and the sacred object of this new kind of belief.
And second, we want to map out how this belief in, non-human intelligence is being built and then broadcast into the culture.
And the core argument is you just can't pull them apart. The UFO phenomenon, modern religion, technology, they're all locked together.
Technology is the environment. It's not just a tool here.
I found the philosophy behind this so striking. The sources bring up Martin Heidegger,
The philosopher, yeah.
and his argument was that we always get technology wrong. We see it as just a tool, like a hammer, but he suggested it could be something more, a saving power.
Something that shapes our whole reality. Like how a Greek temple used to define what was sacred for the ancient Greeks.
Exactly. So if you follow that, technology becomes the sacred thing itself. The infrastructure, the internet, the media lets these ideas go viral.
And the advanced tech, the UFOs themselves, become the sacred object. They're like a portal to, these other intelligences.
And this isn't just some fringe idea. I mean, you look at someone like Robert Bigelow, the billionaire founder of Bigelow Aerospace.
And a major player.
A huge player. He's publicly stated that non-human intelligences are here interacting with us. That's not a small claim from someone like him.
And that's the key. When people with that level of technical know-how and success buy in, it moves the whole thing out of the spiritual realm.
And plants it firmly in the world of high tech.
Right.
So let's get into the people, this invisible college. The research really focuses on two key figures. We've got James, who's a top molecular biologist, an inventor at a major university.
And he's an out-experiencer. Public about it.
And then there's Tyler. He's what they call a meta-experiencer, works in the space industry, holds something like 40 patents.
The fact that they have to operate in this kind of parallel secret tradition, it just shows you the professional stigma.
Oh, absolutely. This invisible college is full of highly trained people who have to do this work on the quiet.
They're blending real scientific rigor with these deeply strange personal experiences.
And James's introduction to this whole world, it sounds like something out of a spy movie.
It really does. After he went public with his interest, hoping to find other serious researchers, he got a visit.
A visit from two men in black suits.
Literally.
Yeah.
He thought it was a prank at first.
Right.
One was a top researcher from a university with known intelligence connections. The other was from a big aerospace firm.
And he said this really grim, silent meeting. It suddenly turned into what he called a meeting of minds.
Right. He realized these are the people I've been looking for. They were dealing with the heavy stuff.
The really difficult research. Radiation effects, physiological changes in people after close encounters.
Stuff you could never, ever publish in a mainstream academic journal.
The secrecy is it's baked into the whole thing. The phenomenon seems to have this protective layer of what their researcher Jacques Vallée called absurdity.
Yeah, because some stories are so bizarre, they involve things like Bigfoot or just nonsensical details.
The mainstream, the establishment, just dismisses the whole topic out of hand.
Which gives the Invisible College the cover it needs to actually get work done.
Okay, so that brings us to an actual boots-on-the-ground investigation. Tyler takes James and the researcher to a site in New Mexico.
A place Tyler believes is one of the most important locations in human history.
He sees it as a site of hierophany.
A manifestation of the sacred, like Lourdes in France or, the original Roswell. It's a place where the veil thins for believers.
And of course, it's surrounded by gift shops selling kitschy alien stuff.
Always.
Yeah.
Consumerism follows the sacred.
So Tyler's convinced this is a crash site with artifacts. But James, the biologist, he's not there to believe. He's there to analyze.
He's there to see if the materials, these alleged pieces of a craft, are genuinely anomalous. He doesn't care where they came from, just what they are.
And this is the bombshell. Months later, after his analysis, the material was truly, genuinely weird.
So strange that one of the scientists involved apparently said the artifact could not have been made in this universe.
That is an incredible statement. How do we even process that? Does that mean it's alien?
Well, James himself was extremely cautious. He stayed agnostic. He
Yeah.
said, look, it could be some kind of top secret human military project.
But his whole strategy, his genius, was that he didn't ignore the weird data, the stuff that doesn't fit the model.
Exactly. He believed that anomaly, whatever it was the whole point. That's what demanded investigation.
And that comfort with ambiguity, that's the real dividing line, isn't it, between these scientists and the public?
Oh, absolutely. The public wants an answer. Alien or not alien. For the scientist, the ambiguity is the data.
Which is the perfect transition to the other side of this, the non-physical side. How is this information supposedly being received? Let's talk about the download.
The download, yeah, that's the term the community uses for this.
Yeah.
Sudden, complete influx of information. Creative insight that feels like it comes from outside yourself.
And it's not just a UFO thing. You see this in high-level science all the time. The sources mention Carey Mullis, the Nobel-winning biochemist.
Right. He often said his best ideas just felt supplied to him. And neurologist Heather Berlin's work shows that super creative people often feel their breakthroughs are a gift, not something they build step by step.
So if this information is just out there in some kind of field, the big question is, how do you tune in?
And that's where Tyler's protocol comes in. He developed this whole system to try and become a better receiver for that signal.
It involves some pretty intense physical and mental practices, yoga, meditation, paying very close attention to synchronicities.
He believed he was literally tuning his DNA, turning his body into a better biological receiver.
He has this metaphor of the body as a supercomputer.
A very sophisticated one. The spine is an electrical circuit, the brain is the processor.
And DNA is like fiber optic wiring that stores information as light.
And his whole point is that if you only rely on your own brain, your conscious mind, it's like using a, quote, small, outdated laptop with no Wi-Fi.
Wow.
To really innovate, he says, you have to tap into the godlike internet of non-local information.
What's incredible is that James, the biologist, actually had a potential scientific framework for this.
He did. He theorized that the ability to interface with this phenomenon, to experience telepathy or whatever, is probably genetic.
So our genes literally build the hardware in our brains that acts as a receiver.
Pretty much. And he tied it to quantum theory.
Yeah.
He suggested people might be tapping into a universal quantum field of information.
Okay, so we're talking about spooky action at a distance.
That's it. Einstein's term for quantum entanglement, where two particles are linked no matter how far apart they are.
So James is suggesting that if consciousness operates at that quantum level, it allows for this connection, like tuning into a universal radio.
And once your brain receives that packet of information, it can trigger real, measurable physiological changes in your body.
That's a massive leap. Did anyone else, any other established figures, back up this kind of quantum model?
Yes, actually. Most famously, the Apollo 14 astronaut, Dr. Edgar Mitchell, he had this dyadic model of consciousness.
And he used quantum non-locality to explain mystical experiences. Things like samadhi.
That feeling of oneness with the universe, yeah. And also remote viewing. For him, these weren't supernatural. They were just complex patterns of energy and information being transferred.
So the intense emotional experience comes from the human brain trying to interpret this new raw data.
Exactly. The mind is trying to make a story out of pure information.
And that's where this gets really interesting, because the story, the meaning-making, is what turns an event into a belief system.
It happens almost entirely through cultural interpretation. The sources make a great point. Nobody sees a weird light and immediately thinks non-human craft.
No, you try to rationalize it. It's a drone, a blimp, a weather balloon.
But historically, these strange events were explained using the language people had. So you get Ezekiel's wheel in the Old Testament or Teresa of Avila's visions.
All interpreted through a divine religious lens. Now, today, it's instantly framed in the language of aliens and advanced physics.
And the thing that gives people that framework is often what they call the book encounter.
Right. For Tyler, it was finding a Carl Sagan book at just the right time in his life. For James, it was reading John Mack's book, Abduction.
And realizing the experiences described in it matched his own confusing childhood memories perfectly.
The narrative provides the key. It lets you fit your own strange experience into a known cultural story.
And this is where we have to talk about media. because there is a huge disconnect between the careful work of scientists like James and what's being sold to the public.
What gets marketed barely resembles the actual findings.
Not even close.
Yeah.
This is where we get into the cognitive science of it, something called the total recall effect.
Okay, what is that?
It's the idea that our brains are actually terrible at telling the difference between a real memory and something we saw on a screen.
So, a fictional movie scene can embed itself in your memory and feel just as real as something that actually happened to you.
Exactly. Think about a good historical movie. A week later, you might remember a specific line of dialogue and think it was something that person actually said, even if the screenwriter just made it up.
The visual and emotional data just sticks.
And this is exploited constantly by media covering this topic. Take the story of Ray Hernandez.
He was a lawyer, an atheist. He had this really positive, transformative experience with a plasma being that he says healed his paralyzed dog.
A pretty amazing story. But when the History Channel covered it, the episode was called UFO Home Invasion.
Wow.
They cut out the healing, his spiritual conversion, all the positive aspects. They just twisted it into a story about terror, because that's what sells.
Fear is a commodity. And this connects back to Valley's idea about absurdity, right?
Absolutely. The media, or maybe the phenomenon itself, often includes these bizarre, absurd elements.
Which makes the educated elite just roll their eyes and dismiss it.
Which is very efficient, because it lets the core message that we're not alone, that there's a higher technology soak into the culture at a deeper unconscious level.
And digital media is just pouring gasoline on this whole fire. We're seeing whole new religious movements pop up. The Nation of Islam was talking about UFOs back in the 20s and 30s.
And now you have things like Jediism, based entirely on Star Wars.
The lines are completely blurred. The source material shows these examples of fictionalized factual content. People are editing R2-D2 and stormtroopers into famous historical photos.
The JFK assassination, the Hindenburg.
And the videos are seamless. They get millions of views. It's creating this new shared cultural memory where fictional characters were part of our actual history. The media isn't reflecting belief anymore.
It's manufacturing a new reality.
And because of that total recall effect, once that image is in your memory, it's incredibly hard to shake.
It just feels true.
So what does this all mean? We've covered everything from quantum physics to cognitive science.
It seems like the UFO phenomenon today is a complex feedback loop. It's self-fueling.
A loop that starts, maybe, with anomalous information being picked up by genetically predisposed people, the Jameses and Tylers of the world.
Right, people who have the biological quantum receiver to tap into that non-local field.
And then, at the same time, that information gets sucked up, distorted, sensationalized, and blasted out at scale by these powerful digital technologies.
Creating this pervasive, tech-based belief system.
And you're left with a central mystery. The actual scientists are okay with the gray area. They know the artifact is weird. They just don't pretend to know its source.
But the media and the public, they can't stand the ambiguity. They need answers now. So they push it into these simple, dogmatic stories of either terror or salvation.
It's the perfect example of how technology, which Heidegger hoped could be a saving power, is just so unreflectively embraced. And as we wrap up, I can't shake this one thought from the source material. It's from the Soviet astronomer Joseph Shklovsky.
What was that?
He was talking about extraterrestrial contact, and he said, the prey runs to the predator.
Wow. He meant that in the context of just passively waiting to be found by a potentially hostile intelligence.
Right. But if you apply that to our relationship with our own technology, with the media that build our reality, it becomes a much more immediate question for all of us.
If we don't understand the influence of our own tools, if we let them build these belief systems for commercial reasons, what kind of crisis are we running toward?
The certainty that the media projects compared to the ambiguity the scientists live in, it just makes me think of Heidegger's final, desperate conclusion.
Which was,
only a God can save us now.